All right, it's confession time. Let's take you back 20 years ago. Picture this. You're the golden child of immigrant parents, consistently getting honor roll, dean's list, early admission to dental school, the whole 9 yards. Fast forward and you're packing your bags, kicked out of that same dental school by the same people who chose you because you were supposed to be a guaranteed graduate. Sounds like a nightmare, right? Well, it happened to me. And guess what? It was the best thing that could have happened. Let me tell you how failing out of dental school led me to discover that I was battling an invisible enemy my entire life in the form of undiagnosed ADHD. And who am I today? My name is Dr. Sulman Aziz Mirza, triple board certified in adult psychiatry, child and adolescent psychiatry, and addiction medicine, and I'm proof that everyone deserves a second chance. I was a dentist. At least I was supposed to be. Growing up, I was that kid who seemed to have it all figured out. You know, the one who aced every test without breaking a sweat and hardly ever studied. My parents were over the moon when I got early admission to dental school. It felt like I was on this perfect path, and everyone had such high hopes for me. I still remember our dental school white coat ceremony and seeing my mom with happy tears streaming down her face saying to me, "My son is going to be a dentist." I had achieved one of my life goals. I had made the sacrifices my mom went through as an immigrant to America via an arranged marriage to my dad, all worth it. Or so I thought. But then dental school hit, and I experienced situations I never faced before. I sit down to study, and suddenly 4 hours would disappear. I'd be in the middle of a lecture, and my mind would wander off to who knows where. And the practical stuff? I'd forget steps, mix up instruments, and generally feel like a fish out of water. I remember our first practical at the end of the first semester, where I ended up drilling our practice tooth to prepare for filling, but I did it on the left side instead of the right side. Oops. At first, I thought maybe I just needed to try harder. So I'd pull all-nighters, drink cup after cup of black coffee, and basically turn myself into a studying machine. But no matter how much effort I put in, I kept falling behind. It was like trying to run through quicksand while carrying a 100-pound backpack. The confusion and self-doubt started to eat away at me. I mean, I'd always been the smart kid, right? So why couldn't I keep up now? Why weren't the things that got me where I was working anymore? As the semesters went on, things just got worse. I'd miss deadlines, forget about quizzes, and struggled to keep up with the workload in general. It felt like I was drowning, and I couldn't figure out why. The stress was overwhelming, and I started to dread going to classes. I'd look around at my classmates, and it seemed like they were all handling things just fine. Was I just not cut out for this? Maybe I wasn't as smart as everybody else thought that I was. Then came the moment I'd been dreading. The dean called me into his office, and I knew what was coming. Just like that, my dream of becoming a dentist was over. I'd failed out of dental school. I was devastated. I'm not usually a crier, but this was one of those times. It felt like my whole world had come crashing down. I had disappointed my parents and myself. But you know what? This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I had no idea at the time, but failing dental school was about to set me on a path that would change my life in ways I never could have imagined. Sometimes rock bottom has a trap door. For me, that trap door led to a tiny island in the Caribbean where I got a second chance of becoming a doctor. But this opportunity came with some serious challenges. Caribbean med schools offer a shot to people who've had setbacks, but they're tough. In my group of about 150 students, only 15 ultimately made it to graduation and got a residency position on the normal 4-year timeline. I knew it was risky, but I felt like this was my last chance at a healthcare career. So I packed up and flew down to the Caribbean. As soon as I got there, I realized that this wasn't going to be easy. I mean, a little hurricane hit the island a day after I landed. Welcome to paradise. The first few months were rough. The work was intense, and we had to teach ourselves a lot of the material because these schools were not academic centers for excellence. For someone like me who struggled with staying on task and doing the work, it was really hard. I tried to study and I ended up getting distracted on my laptop, focused on keeping up with the latest TV shows and sports. There were nights I wanted to give up, but then something changed. I was studying for a big exam and decided to try something new. I broke the material into small chunks and did short, focused study sessions, with quick breaks in between. I started making more friends, and we made study groups to keep each other accountable. Surprisingly, it worked. I aced that exam. That was a turning point. It showed me that maybe I could do this after all. I started coming up with new ways to study that worked for me. Slowly but surely, I began to catch up with and even surpass some of my classmates. As time went on, I saw real progress. I was keeping up with a tremendous amount of work and doing well in most areas. It wasn't easy. There were still plenty of late nights, less partying than I could have been doing. But I was making it happen because I had already experienced the alternative. When graduation came around, I had not only made it through, but got a residency spot at my top choice. It was more than I could have hoped for when I first arrived on that tiny island. The relief and pride I felt were incredible. And oh yeah, my parents could acknowledge my existence again. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. But even though I had overcome this huge challenge, I still didn't understand why things had been so hard for me in the first place. Little did I know, the real battle was just starting. While I'd conquered Caribbean medical school, the real battle was just beginning. Psychiatry residency hit me like a ton of bricks. The amount of information we had to learn was colossal, but for me, it felt impossible. I sit down to study and hours would pass with nothing to show for it. Time just slipped away. The frustrating part was not knowing why I struggled so much. Everyone found it tough, but my co-residents seemed to handle it. I was always behind, forgetting stuff, zoning out in lectures, and missing some deadlines. It felt like my brain was working against me. I remember our annual psychiatry residency in-training exam I'd studied weeks for. When I sat down to take it, my mind went completely blank. I panicked, my heart racing. I barely finished in time, and I was sure I'd failed. It really messed with my head. I felt like a fraud, wondering if I truly belonged in the hospital, taking care of real patients. The stress was unreal. Some days I'd be on the verge of breaking down, not understanding why I couldn't get together. But you know what? I had no clue that I had ADHD. I didn't know that my brain was wired differently. I thought I was just bad at focusing and organizing my thoughts. It's like I was trying to do life with one hand tied behind my back. Looking back, it's obvious how ADHD affected everything. The all-nighters, cramming, always feeling overwhelmed, failing out of dental school. These were all signs that something else was happening. I'd come up with ways to cope without realizing what was really going on underneath. I managed to get by, somehow getting my top choice again for my fellowship training, and ultimately getting my top choice for my job after completing my training there. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Why was everything so much harder for me? I had no idea that one conversation was about to change everything and finally explain the battle I'd been fighting all along. You know that feeling when you're trying to solve a puzzle and suddenly all the pieces fall into place? That's what happened when I stumbled upon the missing piece of my life's puzzle. It all started during a routine new patient evaluation for ADHD at my private practice. We were discussing their life journey and concerns about adult ADHD, and as they listed off their symptoms, something clicked in my brain. It was like looking in a mirror. The constant struggle with focus, the disorganization, the emotional ups and downs, the credit score just over 500, life barely being held together privately despite everyone on the outside feeling things were going great. It all made sense. At first, I couldn't believe it. Me? ADHD? I'm a freaking child and adolescent psychiatrist whose bread and butter patient has ADHD. How could I have missed this before? But the more I thought about it, the more it fit. All those years of struggling, feeling like I was swimming against the current, there was a reason for it. I decided to get evaluated, and let me tell you, it was a journey. The process involved questionnaires, interviews, and even some childhood report cards, as well as that big F I got from dental school. It felt awkward being on the other side of the diagnostic process, but it was eye-opening. When the diagnosis came back as ADHD, it was a mix of relief and confusion. Finally, there was an explanation for all the challenges I'd faced, but I also felt a bit lost. What did this mean for me, for my career? As I learned more about ADHD in adults, and as a healthcare professional, things started to make sense. Those all-nighters in med school? Classic ADHD hyperfocus due to procrastination. The constant distractibility and having multiple side quests in my life? Yep, ADHD as well. It was like someone had written a book about my life, and I was just now reading about it. Dr. Nina Minagawa, a psychologist specializing in ADHD, says that it's 70 to 90% genetic and that 60 to 80% of children continue to adulthood with ADHD. And coming from a Pakistani background, I was also trying to overcome that stigma that I could have something like ADHD, let alone acknowledge that it even exists, with it never once crossing my parents' minds. No wonder it flew under the radar for so long. This discovery changed everything. Suddenly I had a framework to understand my struggles and strengths. It was like someone finally turned on the lights in a room I'd been fumbling around in for years. Now I had a name for what I was dealing with. But could I turn it into something positive? After struggling for years, I finally understood my brain was wired differently. It wasn't broken, just unique in how it processed information. Adapting to this new perspective was tough. I had to figure out how to work with my brain instead of fighting it. I tried all sorts of strategies. One that really helped was using timers. I'd work for 20 to 30 minutes, then take a short break and take a lap around the office. It was like magic for my focus. I also started using colorful sticky notes and diagrams to organize information. I jumped into technology and all the ways that your smartphone or computer can be used for, like the calendars and the reminders apps, instead of just watching YouTube videos. These visual aids played into my ADHD brain's love for stimulation and helped me to remember things a bunch better. I also started to take stimulant medication for my ADHD, which was the last piece of the puzzle for me. The medication unlocked that potential within me, and I was able to get my work done in a straight line. As one of my patients best put it, it vectored me. I also got very much into nutrition and exercise, as well as trying to maintain a regular sleep pattern. All of these things combined turned me into a well-oiled machine. As I got better at managing my ADHD, I noticed some cool benefits to my medical practice. My tendency to think outside the box helped me find creative solutions for tricky cases. My ability to hyperfocus was great during emergencies when quick thinking mattered. Am I high energy sometimes? Perfect for those 14-hour work days I've decided to give myself, as well as all the other non-work stuff that I do, like this channel and other social media work. The biggest and most important change was in how I connected with my patients. Because I knew what it was like to live with an invisible condition, I could really understand their struggles. I knew how it felt to be misunderstood or to have trouble with things that seemed easy for everyone else. When so many people were coming to me for depression and anxiety that was quote-unquote treatment resistant and are on a bunch of different medications, I knew to ask the second questions of where those symptoms were coming from, which for a decent amount of them was tied to untreated or undiagnosed ADHD. All these experiences and lessons weren't just helping me anymore. They were changing how I practiced medicine and connected with my patients. It was like I'd unlocked a new level of understanding and compassion. This journey wasn't just about me. It opened up a whole new world of possibilities for helping others too. Imagine a world where millions of adults struggle every day, not knowing why. As someone who's both a doctor who treats ADHD and an individual with ADHD, I've got a unique view on this. I don't just see symptoms on paper, I can feel them. This helps me spot ADHD in adults when others might miss it. A lot of adults with ADHD have learned to hide their struggles. They might seem fine on the outside, but inside they're fighting a constant battle. It affects their jobs, relationships, and self-worth. Many have trouble keeping jobs or finishing school. All of this can lead to feeling bad about themselves, not knowing that there's a reason for their struggles. But there's hope. When adults get the right help for their ADHD, things can really change. They can learn to focus better, manage their time and their finances, and feel more in control. It's amazing to see someone realize that they're not just lazy or stupid, they just have a different kind of brain and may have to do things differently. This journey has taught me so much, but it's far from over. Every day I learn something new about ADHD and how to help people with it. The story of ADHD understanding and treatment is still being written, and I'm excited to be a part of it. If you're watching this and thinking some of this sounds familiar, don't ignore that feeling. If you suspect you might have undiagnosed ADHD, talk to a doctor or a mental health professional. Understanding what's going on in your brain can change everything. Remember, your biggest challenge might actually be your strength in disguise. It was for me. So keep pushing forward, and who knows? Your struggles and failures might lead you exactly where you're supposed to be. It did for me. If you stuck around this far, thanks for hearing my story. I hope that you were able to connect with it in some way. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and share your experiences in the comments below. There's so many of us late diagnosed ADHDers, so I hope we can have our own community over here. And oh yeah, if you want to know about my journey with ADHD medications, check out the video below. Until next time, be safe and be well.